for the Iraqi people to demonstrate peacefully.
What do you think of the protests across Iraq in the past few weeks, and how do you think that will affect Noor al-Maliki's government?
It's a reflection of the failure of the political groups in addressing the issues that the Iraqi people need them to be addressed, and including ourselves. We failed really in responding to the demands and desires of the Iraqi people, and we failed miserably, all of us, in getting the country moving forward. Sectarianism, politicizing religion, unemployment, no services. The third of the Iraqi people are living under the poverty line. That's why, because of this failure, and because of the failure of the government, and because of the failure of Mr. Maliki, we see the people have gone to the streets.
America's Defense Secretary Robert Gates has repeated Washington's apology for the mistaken killing of 9 Afghan boys in a NATO airstrike last week. Mr. Gates described the deaths as a setback after arriving in Afghanistan for talks. His visit as US troops get ready to begin a phased withdrawal in July. In Côte d'Ivoire, gangs of youths and uniformed police have looted at least 10 homes belonging to politicians who are allied to the opposition leader Alassane Ouattara. UN peacekeepers have been unable to control the chaos in Abidjan. Roadblocks have been set up by government supporters to stop them. In the west of the country, rebels claim to have captured the town of Tulepleu from government forces, but Gbagbo's military say this hasn't happened. We report a lot here on Al Jazeera about Mexico's drugs-related violence, and some of the people who are affected by it are finding comfort in spirituality. It's a mainly Catholic nation, but as Frank Contreras reports, many there are turning to religious figures from Mexico's indigenous past.
Raising prayers to a saint of death. Martin George has built a shrine to her in the living room of his own home. He lights candles and focuses deeply on her skeletal image. Though it may frighten some, for him it brings comfort in times of despair. In Mexico, the many followers of Santa Muerte are widely considered to be drug traffickers or other criminals. Martin George says there are criminals among all religions and cults. He insists most of Santa Muerte's believers are honest people.
They don't ask her to help them commit robberies. They don't ask for help getting drugs. They ask her to help them get ahead in order to have complete lives. And when it's time to die, to leave behind an inheritance for their family members. For us, that's called a saintly death.
A scandal broke out recently when police arrested this Mexico City man, David Romo, a self-appointed bishop in what he called the Church of Santa Muerte. Police allege that Romo posed as a member of the Zetas drug cartel, then kidnapped elderly people for ransom and laundered the money into his own account. Romo says he is innocent, but remains behind bars. Scholars say this image dates back to pre-Hispanic Mesoamerica. Over the centuries, Santa Muerte has held her place among Mexico's most sacred icons. The country's biggest religious institution, the Catholic Church, does not officially recognize her. Still, she's become so popular with so many people that a cottage industry now produces Santa Muerte statues, candles, necklaces, and anything else believers might need to create an altar in her honor.
I'm inside Mexico's famous Sonora market, where you can buy just about anything, from healing herbs to a love potion. But an increasing number of people are coming to this market to buy items like this one in devotion to the Santa Muerte.
The author of a best-selling book on Santa Muerte says it's no coincidence that an increasing number of people are turning to the death saint, particularly in this difficult time when drug violence appears to be raging out of the Mexican government's control.
People ask her for things that the Mexican state should be providing. Those are rights such as housing, justice, employment, and health. And those rights the state should be providing. In that way, you could say Santa Muerte is helping the Mexican state.
And so the cult of the death saint continues to grow, and untold numbers of the faithful cling to the image of this mystical figure, hoping she will help protect them in what are likely to be more difficult times ahead. Frank Contreras, Al Jazeera, Mexico City.
David Foster with you here on Al Jazeera with the headlines. Rebel fighters in the Libyan town of Ras Lanuf are battling pro-Gaddafi forces as the unrest continues. We're getting reports of airstrikes leaving several dead, including a family trying to escape. In an interview with a French news channel, Colonel Gaddafi's denied reports of hundreds, even thousands, dying, and again insisted that Al-Qaeda's to blame. The US president says NATO is considering all of its options before deciding on a response to the crisis in Libya. President Obama says military intervention is not off the table. Egypt's prime minister's appointed a new caretaker cabinet, and the country's prosecutors now ordered 47 police officers to be detained for allegedly burning documents at several state security headquarters. Tunisia's interim prime minister has unveiled his new cabinet. It's the third caretaker government since the overthrow of President Ben Ali. Kaid Sebsi was appointed after the previous part-time prime minister resigned. About 200 Shia protesters have been rallying outside the US embassy in Bahrain, calling for Washington to stop backing the monarchy. Shia Muslims have been pushing for more rights in protests directed at the Sunni royal family. Let's hear from one of the protesters, Zainab Kawaja.
We want America not to get involved. We can overthrow this regime. We can. The people of Bahrain is strong, just like the people of Egypt. All we want is for America not to support the dictatorship in Bahrain, because people here, they're going to have to sacrifice so much more if the Americans decide to support the regime.
Reports reaching us from Yemen that riots have taken place inside a prison in the capital, Sana'a, and that tear gas and bullets have been seen, and police vans are in the area of the prison. US Defense Secretary Robert Gates has repeated that Washington is very sorry for the mistaken killing of 9 Afghan boys in a NATO airstrike last week. He described the deaths as a setback after arriving at Afghanistan for a visit as US troops prepare to begin a phased withdrawal from Afghanistan later on this summer. I'll be back at the top of the hour. That's after Inside Story here on Al Jazeera.
Saudi Arabia mobilizes thousands of troops to try and quell rising dissent in the kingdom. Protesters have called for a day of rage and are using social network sites to rally protesters. But even as King Abdullah announces billions of dollars in social reforms, is this going to be enough to stave off a revolution? And is the House of Saud really listening to the growing voices of discontent? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Darren Jordan. Saudi Arabia is drafting thousands of security personnel in an attempt to crush growing revolt in the kingdom. Meanwhile, Saudi activists